My name is Raquel Black. Kia'ani Nishtunsenjikene Basachin. I'm a member of the Navajo Nation and the new co-working manager here at Change Lab. Thank you so much for taking the time out of your schedules today to be with us here. First off, I'd like to give a brief introduction to Change Labs, and for those who aren't already familiar with our organization, officially, Change Labs is a Native-led and Native-controlled nonprofit organization based on the Navajo Nation and Hopi Nations. We provide creative workspace, tools, resources, and knowledge for Native entrepreneurs. And one of the most popular questions that we get is, how do I start a business? All of our programs and services here are designed to help Native entrepreneurs, artisans, change makers, vendors to both start up and strengthen their businesses. So if that's the question that you have, I have some information that I want to share with you guys today that could be of use for you. One of our many services is business coaching. We offer free virtual 90-minute appointments with any of our coaches. They're available on Monday, and they each have their own expertise depending on what you're looking for. We have a whole team of very bright and eager coaches, such as Jessica Stego, the director of our business incubator. We have Christine Laughter, the director of our kinship blending program. We have our finance director, Marsha Greyeyes, and then a couple of our other coaches are Cecilia So and Tim Deal. They're each very knowledgeable in their own specialties and will be able to assist you in areas where you're needing help for your business at any stage that you're at. From marketing to accounting and bookkeeping systems, or if you need help with creating a business model or navigating the Navajo Nation systems for things such as applying for your business site lease or registering with a Navajo Nation business, with the Navajo Nation Business Regulatory. You can find more information or book an appointment with one of our coaches at the link here on the screen. It's nativestartup.org/events. The next thing I'd like to talk about is our business incubator. Change Labs runs one of the only Native business incubators for Native entrepreneurs in the United States, and we're right here in the Northern Arizona area. It's a 12-month program for entrepreneurs who want support and training on how to start your business and how to run it on the Navajo Nation or Hopi Nation. The program is led by Jessica Stego, our director of the business incubation. As I mentioned earlier, Change Labs will be accepting application for our next round of entrepreneurs who want to participate in the program later this year. If you're interested in and would like assistance with your logo or website design, marketing, your finances, definitely check out our website. Our link is here at nativestartup.org/incubator for more information. Another question that we get is, how do I create a website? Until we go back to opening our open studio hours at our headquarters in Tuba City, we're going to refer you to our YouTube channel. We currently have over 40 recorded sessions and discussions, all led by Native entrepreneurs and creatives. They're all designed for Native business owners. Our workshops cover topics like social media marketing, website design, doing business on the Navajo Nation, and many others. It's an amazing and growing archive with shared knowledge from other Natives in our ever-growing network for those who really just want to see our Native people prosper and thrive. Another great resource we have is our social media platforms. We're on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. And I recommend that you check out those pages for other updates as well. There's links that we post from time to time from many of our partners and others in our network for other opportunities and grants or events that they offer. I can also refer you to our link here for our listings of all the resources that we share and update regularly. So definitely check out our page at nativestartup.org/resources. And then yet another question we get often is, how do I get help running my business? There are many aspects to being an entrepreneur, and the answer or solution that you may be searching for isn't always obvious, especially on the Navajo and Hopi reservations. Here at Change Labs, one of our driving factors is kinship. Building in relationships among our communities and our nations, and how Change Lab can help here is through our co-working space. For those of you in or near Tuba City, you may have been aware of our co-working studio over at Moenkopi Legacy Inn campus. For the past few years, that space is no longer available at this time, but the construction of our new headquarters, which is located right next to the Two City chapter on Main Street, is currently underway. So starting later this year, we will have a new co-working space available for you. Some services that we'll be able to offer are desk-based, Wi-Fi access, color printing. We plan to bring back many of our in-person trainings for those who are interested. And the list goes on as far as how we're planning to support our entrepreneurs in the community there at the new headquarters. And we're really excited to bring that space to you to help bring building and growing your businesses. And then finally, we have a whole spectrum of Native entrepreneurs all over the world, and Change Labs has been curating our own list of hundreds of them. So if you're interested in marketing or in the market for finding other Native service providers who can help you with your business, or maybe you're searching for Native made products, definitely check out the site here at resrising.org. Or if you have your own business and you have not registered it, it is free to sign up. You visit the site there. We have currently over 600 Native-owned businesses listed there, and we think that they're really great resources for helping to start up or run your business. So thank you. Thank you for listening. If you have any questions about Change Labs at all, or if you're interested in any of our services and you'd like to know where to start or how to start with our services, feel free to email me. My direct email is here, raquel@nativestartup.org. And then we'll also post more links in the chat box down below during the presentation. Next, I'd like to talk about our workshop etiquette before we introduce our speaker for today. It's just etiquette, and then how we can be respectful of our guest time today. We ask that everyone stay on mute during the presentation, but feel free to populate the chat box below with your questions, and we'll make sure to get to them when it comes time for Q&A. And then a reminder too, our session is being recorded today. This session, along with all of our past sessions, are available and will be available on Change Labs YouTube channel. And then finally, I get to introduce Mr. Douglas Capitan. He is of the Navajo Nation Division of Economic Development. He's here to speak to us today on the 2022 Navajo Nation Business and Artisan Grant. And he will be available to answer any questions that you have today. So welcome, Douglas, and thank you for being with us today.
Thank you, Raquel. Okay. Hi, good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for your attention today, and thank you for participating in the workshop. So today I have on, I'll be presenting about the Artisan and Small Business Grant. I also have Ms. Shania Manis, who will also be providing me support with questions and answers. We will have time for questions and answers at the end, but we'll try to breeze through this as quickly as possible and efficiently as possible. There's a lot of information to review and to go over, and especially with eligibility. So with any questions whatsoever, you can feel free to email us at navajo-economy@navajo-nsn.gov, or give us a call at our phone numbers. Right now, I can honestly say that we're kind of plateauing, so we don't have as much calls coming in, so it should be fine. But after today's presentation, that might change. Who knows? So the purpose of our presentation today is to align our and inform our applicants of the grant process. This includes our goals and purposes, as well as to provide sort of an overview of our processes, flows, and best practices, and then receive advice on how to effectively apply different components. If there's any issues that need to be addressed, if you have any recommendations that will make your application process easier, we take those into recommendation and try to figure out how to best fit solutions. So my role within the division is I'm the support services manager for the Division of Economic Development. So I oversee our budgeting process as well as various different components of the daily functions of the division. Ms. Manis is our Senior Economic Development Specialist with the Business Regulatory Department, who has taken on an additional role to oversee our eligibility technicians, as well as the eligibility review process of the grant program. So she's very knowledgeable in regards to pretty much a lot of the grant processes. If you have questions regarding eligibility, processing of the grant, and general questions, she is the person who will be able to provide that expertise to your process. So orientate, inform. So the grant mission, so our mission of this grant is in particular is the Navajo Nation Artisan and Small Business Economic Relief Grant is to provide financial grant and aid to those Navajo artists and small businesses who experience financial hardship due to the COVID-19 public health emergency. And in particular, this is who experience financial hardship business-wise. One thing that we want to emphasize is that this is a business grant, and we focus on the business components of your artistry, of your small business, of your organization. So when you're going through our application, you'll notice that there are things that are really business oriented. And if you have questions in that, I produced a tool that hopefully should help answer some of those questions. It's actually a frequently asked questions document that we have available. And our hope is that this aid will, well, one, we hope that a pandemic like this will never occur, but two, secondary goals are to help businesses sort of orientate themselves in a way that they may have not been before, meaning, certain parts of our application have requirements for supporting documentation. If you as a business have never yet, logged your mileage or really kept receipts, now is a good opportunity to begin developing those important business skills. So that way in the future, if something like this happens again, God forbid, you're prepared and ready to go. And generally speaking, business-wise, it is really good to begin those habits of practicing, taking your mileage, creating log to and from wherever you're conducting business, keeping important receipts on hand, and filing your taxes as appropriately as possible. So that way, you're prepared. It's always better to be prepared than sorry. So I hope that this sort of initiates those conversations within businesses, in particular the smaller businesses. So that way you have everything ready to go in the event that something like this is going to be necessary. So key staff that we have on board right now, again, as I mentioned, Ms. Shania Manis, who is our supervisor for the application intake process. If I can go ahead and have her introduce herself very briefly. Shania.
Hi, everybody. My name is Shania Manis, and I am a senior economic development specialist with the Division of Economic Development in the Business Regulatory Department. And currently I am overseeing the intake process for the grant application. And we are located at the Division of Economic Development building, and we are currently taking paper applications. So that's kind of what I am overseeing currently. And there is an online application, which Doug will kind of go over. But yes, I have been doing this for a few weeks now. And so we're pretty caught up on everything. So right now is the time to apply, and I can answer any questions that you do have. Thanks for having me today. Thank you, Doug.
Okay, good. Thank you, Shania. And then we have a Western Navajo eligibility technician who is working out of our Western RBDO office in Tuba City. And then Mr. Kobe Tom, who is our public information officer, who oversees a lot of the general things that we have in process for the grant application. So we can be reached by phone at 928-871-6544, as well as by email. So early in the beginning of the grant program, we had an influx of questions and an influx of requests for services. So we're pretty caught up, and I think that if you were to email or call, you would be able to get services fairly quickly, just depending on your situation. So if not, information is readily available through our Facebook page and social media. So at Navajo Economic Development for Facebook, as well as at Navajo Economy for our Instagram and our TikTok. So our goal is to maximize the financial output of this funding. So we're set on making sure that this money gets out to Navajo businesses and Navajo artists, 100% of it. We don't want to revert anything back. So that's our mission. And I hope that we are successful, and that's what we're working for. But we're also looking at ensuring that the accuracy, legitimacy, and integrity of these funds are used wisely. because this is federal money, utilizing Navajo resources and our our division services. So it's important that we ensure that things are done properly, which is why there is a service or a system in place. Otherwise, we don't want to be held accountable in a negative way to the U.S. Treasury Department. We want to make sure that we set a good example, so that way, if the federal government has availability of funds, that they look at the Navajo Nation in a positive way and say that they gave it out to those people that were in need, and those artists and businesses are authentic. So our application process is really a two-part process. There's an unofficial process, which is the review part. Just like any assignment that you're given, whether it was in school, high school, college, or anywhere, you want to review the process first to kind of get an understanding. So we provided some tools to help with that. And I hope that our applicants have been at least starting with reviewing the process and kind of getting to know what the process looks like. Part one is the actual business registration. I'll go over the two types of registration that is available. Part two is the actual grant application itself. So we do have those two components of this application process. You ideally should start with part one first, and then proceed to part two, but some business owners and applicants have been starting with part two, which is fine. Just know that that might cause a delay, and I'll explain why a little bit later. So the review process for the application, the resources. So you want to review what your eligibility for is, what to expect in regards to applications and such. So resources are available. We do have these available via link. I post these on Facebook on a regular basis. I probably should update them again, but the first one is review your resources. The Navajo Nation Artisan Business Grant Process Summary. So this process is available. I can email it to Change Labs to distribute to their clients. But essentially just goes over, what documents are here, where to go for the application online, where you can find information pertaining towards deadline information, as well as the online portal where it's located and where to find additional information. Frequently asked questions. This is that document that I mentioned a little earlier in regards to questions that you might have. This saves a lot of time with calling in or emailing. This information will provide general information as to, what's my eligibility? What are the eligibility criteria? Can I apply if I previously applied and received funding? What can I submit in place of a CIB? All of this stuff is here to assist you saving time. So we made this to help you. If it's a question that you have at 3 a.m. in the morning on a Sunday, then you can go ahead and use this as a resource. And we hope if you think that there's something that should be added that could help another applicant, send us an email or send me an email with that information, and we can include it and answer those questions. But this is pretty generalized, and we hope that people are utilizing it so that way they don't waste time on the phone or waiting for an email, and that they can move ahead on their way. Sorry. And then the application process. Again, like I mentioned, registration is going to be part of the application. You'll need to register your business, and there's two types of registration, just depending on your business organization. And then part two is the grant application itself. As you can see, there's different options to apply. We do recommend applying online, as it'll be the fastest with regard to if you need to make corrections or if you need to add another document. And there's a process in which if you have your application returned and you need to log back in and it's locked out, I'll go ahead and have Shania kind of give a description as to how to fix that. But the online application is the best way to apply, just for speed and accuracy. Otherwise, of course, with paper, it takes a while for things to get processed and pushed forward. And sometimes, admittedly, you do run the risk of having your documents lost in the sea of other documents. So we try to recommend that the online process be utilized before the paper application. But of course, the paper application does have its purpose. So part one, I'm going to go ahead and have Shania, I'll go ahead and do the online registration on Navajo Economy, and then I can have Shania describe the BRD portion of the registration. So we have two options for business registration. One is going through the navajoeconomy.org website. This is the simplest of the two, being that the information that you're providing is your general business information, as well as a copy of your CIB, and then as your signature. This process is ideally for artists and sole proprietors, as we'll describe in option 2 why what other specifics are going to be required for other businesses in terms of the organization. But really all you need is a CIB, your signature, and supporting documentation. And you want to be as detailed as possible. The information that you provide here is what we do to verify you as a business. So as a business owner, ideally you should know you should be able to adequately describe what your business is. If I'm a silversmith, I'm going to detail, the type of work that I do. I'm going to describe the tools that I use and where I generally sell. So it helps us when you provide that information to move your application ahead faster than it would be for us to question your application, to give you a call. If you're not there and available to answer your call, then that's going to delay other things. So if you put all that information up front and you're as detailed as possible, then it helps us move your application quickly. And then I'll go ahead and have Shania describe option 2 with the Business Regulatory Department.
Thanks, Douglas. So for the Business Regulatory Department, we have 2 sections. One of them is with the corporate code side, which all LLCs and corporations must register to do business on the Navajo Nation. So if you are an LLC and you are registered with the corporation code side, then you can utilize that number. Or if you're a corporation, you can utilize that number. So more than likely, if you are registered with the corporation code side and you have a certificate of good standing, that should already be in place. But if you do choose to apply with the corporation code side, we will still need to see your certificate of Indian blood, because not all corporations registered with the corporation code need to be Navajo owned. So this is a unique situation if you're going to be using your corporation code side. Most people will not be utilizing that. And for the business regulatory priority vendor, that is another area where most businesses should probably already have applied and probably are in on our source listing. You can utilize that number to apply for the grant itself. And you can call our department to get that number if you're already registered as a priority vendor. If you are not, and you would like to become a priority vendor, the application is on navajoeconomy.org, and you'll click on certification and registration. And on that link, you'll find priority vendor application. You can start your application, but it will take 2 to 3 weeks for that process, because with the priority vendor application, we do a number of clearances, which could take up to a couple of weeks. So depending on what your goal is, if you're just trying to apply for the grant, your best bet is to do the business registration number that Douglas explained. But if you are already a source, if you're already on our source listing, then you can just use that number on your certificate. And if you don't have it, you can always call us and we can provide that for you. But that's the 2 options we have in the business regulatory side. So
awesome. Thank you, Shania. And with the numbers, if you registered back during the 2020 cycle, you're more than welcome to use that same number that you utilized back then if you didn't proceed through the grant process. So those numbers are still good. If you did receive a certificate or went through the BRD process, then just be sure that you have everything up to date. And this process is to ensure that we're giving the money directly to Navajo businesses. This is one way to ensure that those who are eligible because of being Navajo owned are done so in this way. But a good majority of businesses will probably proceed through the navajoeconomy.org, the first option, as opposed to the second option. The second option is really if you are conducting or have conducted official business with the Navajo Nation. So we want to avoid some sort of, any sort of non-necessary processes and help you move through the process a lot quicker. So if you're ever intending on registering your business officially or getting things going, then for sure go through the business regulatory department. But if your sole purpose is only just for the grant, then go ahead and just move through the option 1 through the navajoeconomy.org business registration process. So part 2, the grant application, eligibility for the grant, and this goes for both artists and businesses. You must be 18 plus years of age or older. And the reason being is that in order to enter into a legally binding contract, which if you're approved for the grant, you sign a legally binding grant agreement. So in order to do that, you must be in the age of the majority. You also must be a member of the enrolled member of the Navajo Nation, be able to demonstrate financial hardship due to the COVID-19 public health emergency. You must not have been previously reimbursed by other programs, and you must be certified or registered with Navajo business registration process. So let me go to the financial hardship question, or part of this slide. Financial hardship, you must not have made more money than you did in previous years. So that's why within the grant application, we have an expenditure worksheet that details your a comparison between the 2 years. So back in 2019, everything was fairly normal as you would consider. And then 2020 is when the economy and shutdown sort of went towards a downward slope. So if you made more money in 2020 than you did in 2019, you might still be eligible, but we'll need some sort of explanation as to what occurred. Sometimes some businesses did start up in 2019 and can demonstrate that they did, but because they started partway through the year, it looks different than 2020 when they actually experienced a full year. So things like that, just be sure that you have something prepared and ready to explain. So that way we know what your situation is. We don't know you per se. So this is the application process, and supporting documentation is a way for us to get to know your side of the situation. So if anything, always be more diligent in regards to the explanations and providing supporting documentation that helps us move your application forward. So with a not previously reimbursed by other programs, this specific allocation of funding was based off of the 2020 grant program. It was a deferral meant to refund the program that was cut short back in 2020 because of the short amount of time that we were allotted to have this program going. So if you did receive the grant program in 2020, we're taking that into consideration by evaluating the current progress of this current grant program. And what will need to happen is we'll need to make a request to our leadership in council to make any amendments to the legislation in the way it was written. So it is going to be a process. Our stance has always been in favor of the Navajo businesses, and we will work on that recommendation after an evaluation. It looks pretty good to make that recommendation at this point. So hopefully we'll have something moving towards the end of this month to make that momentum forward. So that way we can go ahead and begin awarding all applicants again. So anyone who previously received it during this program will also be able to receive additional funding. Again, I am not promising that this will occur. I'm just saying that this is potentially going to happen, and it'll just be a means of time, and as well as making that effort to make those recommendations. So hopefully, cross your fingers, we're successful, and we were able to expand the program again to businesses that previously received funding. Now, certification, again, as I explained, it's our means of ensuring that we are giving funding to Navajo businesses, and we do that evaluation process through that registration process for part 1. So, Shania, I'll go ahead and have you do the artisan eligibility criteria.
So the eligibility criteria for the grant is you are independently owned and operated, meaning that you sell the jewelry and you make the decisions on your business. And you are organized as an artist in a medium or discipline in the art performance. So the Artisan grant is very, there's a lot of different types of artists that we've seen come through the application process. And sometimes it'll cross over into small business, but for the most part, you are an artist. You make jewelry, you are a performing artist, you are, there's a number of different mediums that fall into that discipline. So we basically will take all kinds of different types of artists. And then that you're able to demonstrate sustained commitment to your work. This one is basically in the application process. We just need to see that you were in business in 2019 and that you have some proof of your work. And this can be in a lot of different forms. We've seen quite a few individuals become very creative in their applications. And so I understand that a lot of people don't keep receipts from 2019, so receipts, and a lot of people don't file their tax returns. So in order for us to move forward with the application, we do ask for criteria such as pictures of your work with the stamp. That really does help us. So say your signature is on the back of a bracelet, we will accept that. A lot of people have been going to the traders that they sell to show, get a statement from a trader that says, Betty Begay sells us rugs annually. Others have chosen to receive statements from customers. We do ask that you provide a phone number on the statement, because sometimes we do call the customers just to confirm, that they have been buying from you. So it's just a matter of being held accountable on our end, because again, these are federal dollars, and we need to be able to, if audited, show that you are a legitimate business selling and you are sustained in your work, as well as this is your main source of income. But again, we are very flexible in what we accept. And so again, a lot of artists are getting creative in the way that they're able to show that they are artists. And it's not that we don't believe the artists, it's just we have to have some kind of record. So those are the eligibility criteria.
Thank you, Shania. And with our small businesses, your small business must be organized as a for-profit with at least 51% ownership by an enrolled member of the Navajo Nation, and you must have been in operation prior to January 1st of 2020. This funding is business interruption funding. It's not startup funding. It's not funding to get you going. You had to have been in operation prior to January 1st of 2020, prior to the pandemic. And we're going by Small Business Administration definitions of small business, which means that the business must have less than 500 employees as of March 1st of 2020. And the business owner will be considered an employee. One thing that I do want to emphasize too, in terms of, I guess, as a means of empowerment for Navajo business owners, is that I've run into an occasion where an artist doesn't consider themselves a business owner. If you provide and sell a product or service, you are a business owner. So take pride in that, because you're part of the economy and you're part of this essential component of the way we live and operate. Which brings me to just being sure that you always remember to support your Navajo economy by buying Navajo. I'm a strong believer that if we did something each day just to purchase something Navajo or stay on the reservation to for our products and goods and services, we would be all the more better tomorrow for that purpose. So always keep that in mind. Always feel good when you're purchasing Navajo art from a Navajo business owner, or you're shopping at, even if you're shopping at Bashes, because Bashes may not necessarily be Navajo owned, but they do hire Navajo employees. That's part of the component about establishing a business on the Navajo Nation is that you do have Navajo employment preference. So yeah, support each other. We'll support you and we'll get through this hard and challenging time together. So the application overview, I will go over some key specifics about this, but they're pretty self-explanatory. And if there's any questions regarding the application itself, we'll go ahead and we can address those individually. But they're pretty much what the application does is it reviews, it asks eligibility questions. So these are all the information that we previously went through within this presentation. But I'll highlight the most important parts to keep an eye out for and what to do or what to input or what to kind of be aware of when we're looking at the review process. So of course, be sure that you input your information clearly. And if you do it online, of course, you type that information in. One thing that I want to emphasize is that contact information. When we need to get a hold of an applicant, it's important that we have a correct phone number, correct mailing address, and one that can accept voicemails and one that is checked on a regular basis. Some of the issues that occurred last time was getting a hold of people and getting a hold of people on time. We're not going to run into that situation here because we have a set deadline of October 31st for the program. But there were instances where we were trying our very best to get a hold of applicants, and for whatever reason, we just kept running into those instances where you would get that voicemail message. The voicemail, the caller you were trying to reach is no longer in operation, etc. And it's really unfortunate because for that reason, we were unable to get a hold of them in time to sign a specific grant agreement. So don't let that be a hindrance into your grant process. Be sure that your voicemail is cleared and ready to accept voicemails, because if we need to get a hold of you, we're going to get a hold of you by phone first. Sometimes email, but generally by phone. Just be sure that you have that in operation and ready to go. With all of these, again, they're just general questions in regards to the grant program. One thing that sometimes I see get confused most often is what are your gross sales? Were your gross sales less than 100,000? For most everyone, that's going to be yes. For artists in particular, if you're an artist and your general sales are kind of on the higher end, so let's say you're that particular artist that sells at the Heard Museum, you sell at private sale auctions, you sell at the Santa Fe Indian Market, you're generally probably going to have a higher grossing sale revenue for the year. And generally you have the ability to show that on paper. If that's the case, then those artists can apply as a small business instead of an artist, and which means that you're eligible for more than the maximum of $5,000. So that's not a guarantee that you'll get more than 5,000. It just depends on the information provided through the worksheet, expenditure worksheet. Sorry, excuse me. But just know that if you're an artist and you're kind of on the higher end of the spectrum for revenues, you can have that option of applying as a small business. With number 8 in particular, again, like I said earlier, if you're an artist or a small business, you know your business more than anyone else here. So we expect you to provide us with details to help us push your application further, because the more authentic the application looks and appears and is, the easier it is for approvals to go through. So number 8 in particular, what you'll need to put as an artist is information pertaining to where you sell your items, where you purchase your supplies. All of those details that go into making the product that you make and sell should be included into number 8. If you're a performance artist, you know where on average you used to perform. If it was at the ceremonial, if it was anywhere else where you were paid to perform, then that information should be fully laid out in number 8. Number 9 is to help us sort of get survey information. We kind of want to figure out what the industry looks like for artists. So that way, potentially in the future, we can make recommendations to fund, a warehouse where people sell their supplies for jewelry, or if heaven were to grace us now with several $1 million to do what we would want to do, My recommendation would be to have the Navajo Nation, create a store similar to Thunderbird or similar to Monster Slayer, a supply store where we can provide direct supplies from the Navajo Nation to our artists for a price. There's things like that might, can come up in any sort of occasion, and having data and information like that is really helpful for us to make educated recommendations to our leadership. And then for 11 and 12, these answering yes to these don't necessarily prevent you. It just takes additional review. So this generally won't be an issue for most artists, but if you're a business or a Navajo artist, and let's say you have a loan provided by the Navajo Nation, you can have debt and you can have a loan out there, but the only issue comes when it becomes delinquent. So if you are delinquent, then that's fine. Just detail that, and options can be presented and considered. We just need to know about it ahead of time and allow enough time for us to have that go through. Don't submit an application 2 days before the deadline and expect us to come up with the decision within that time. Be sure that you allow enough time if you know that information. But again, regardless of what the circumstances, always apply well ahead of the deadline. So that way we're not running into any circumstances that may affect the approval of your application. And then here, a checklist of required documents. We only have 2 things that are really required aside from the application itself. Documentation verifying your history of partnership or any sort of organization. This is where those receipts really come in handy. If you sell at Earl's, then I know Earl's has vendor cards. If you have previously sold at flea markets, they usually will provide you with receipts. If you don't have anything at all, then that's when you might want to get, have someone who knows who you are write you a letter. Typically a person of notability, meaning that either you have the manager of Perry Knoll, or you have the manager of the supply store, or if a member from Change Labs wouldn't mind and verifying that you are who you are, then that's perfectly fine. We just need some sort of documentation that we can put in the files and say that, okay, we can attest to this person's authenticity. So you'll need to work on that. Think creatively, but be sure that you include correct contact information for those businesses that can verify you. And then lastly, the expenditure worksheet. So this will be the next page. Well, the eligibility disclosure is where you sign the information, but the expenditure worksheet is one thing I wanted to highlight because this is
real quick. I'm sorry, Douglas. Can you pull the expenditure worksheet up? I'm not able to see it. I think that this is the biggest part.
So the expenditure worksheet. I'm sorry, I thought I was sharing the application. I wasn't this entire time, but
that's okay. I think this is the most important part right here.
Yeah. So I'll give my 2 cents on this first, and then I'll have Shania explain what these components are. But the expenditure worksheet, it's laid out. If you go to our frequently asked questions document, I have a glossary of all of these terms that are included within the expenditure worksheet, what they are and what to do. Some of them I have created calculators to assist in determining what those are. But my recommendation is, and what I don't think people really realize this is, a good majority of what you're doing is you either your purpose of your business is to make revenue, to pay for things, of course, and to also purchase the things that you need to sell with. So a good majority of your expenditures should be your wages, because you're paying yourself. If you're not paying yourself, then I'm not too sure what kind of a business you are. So that would be employee expenses, your wages, as well as supplies. Now, these all of these items should have documentation of some kind, and depending on what it is, we're going to be more stringent on things more so than others. So, but I'm always going to emphasize that when you're a business, you need to pay your employees. If you're a business of one person, how are you paying yourself to pay your bills? So that's one thing to consider. The other part is your supplies. If you're going to claim supplies, then you can't just come up with a number out of nowhere. It has to be based off of something. And that's generally the case for many of these. But some components I did create a calculator. We have a rent calculator if you run and own your business out of your rental, like you're an apartment. But rental is primarily for equipment and those sort of components of your business, not necessarily for where you live. And then, yeah, other things definitely take into consideration. I'll go ahead and let Shania go ahead and take that.
Okay, thank you, Douglas. So what we commonly see is a lot of artists in particular stating that they don't have any proof from 2019. And so it becomes very difficult for us to move the application onto the next phase. What we're doing as we do the intake of applications is we are just screening the application to give it its best chance of approval as it goes on to the third party company who then approves the application. So we try to ask for the best possible chances for your application to go through. And oftentimes most don't have receipts and from 2019, they'll have receipts from 2022 more recently, but we can't really utilize that. So we are just trying to total your expenses, because if you see at the bottom there, your total cost of goods and operating expenses is going to become your estimated award amount. So when it comes to supplies and materials, we really would like to see receipts. We really would like to see your own expenditure worksheet. So a lot of people do keep track of their financials by month. And if they can just, print out their Excel spreadsheet for 2019, then we can utilize that. Same with advertising. A lot of artists don't use advertising, so there's not a whole lot of expenses there. But our other second major expense is usually mileage. And when we ask for mileage, we obviously would prefer receipts, but that's usually not the case. So we end up asking for a mileage log. So you go to, Flagstaff every weekend to sell at the flea market. We need to see that you are, you write it out. You explain and justify and where do you sell when you go to Flagstaff? Or if you have to drive to Farmington to get your supplies, justify that. So a mileage log is requested at the time when you are applying. And then fees, again, fees can be the flea market fees that you're paying. It can be the, if you entered a Indian market, those fees, those are kind of what the fees are considered. That's what we consider the fees, what you pay in order to sell your product. And then again, employee expenses, how much do you pay yourself? That is a big one to help you get the number up. You can also provide information on employees that you do have. If you pay others, you can, provide payroll, but usually that doesn't fall under, for a lot of artists, that doesn't really, most don't have employees, but if you pay yourself, include that. And then rent and lease. I know that Douglas did create a worksheet to determine rent and lease. So say you do all your jewelry out of one room in your house. If we don't have the sheet available, I will just basically say, okay, well, how much of your space do you utilize in your home? And if it's 1/4, then we kind of generate that amount, for the, how much do you pay a month? Okay, well, what's 1/4 of that? That's kind of my easy go-to when it comes to someone who is renting. Or if you actually have, if you have a studio and you rent that, we will accept that, the rent and lease agreement. Repair and maintenance, if you, whatever it is that you do have, we will be able to, if you have to repair your equipment, definitely include that into the cost. Tax and licenses. A lot of the artisans we've been working with do not pay tax, and that's why we don't really have a whole lot of tax returns, because ideally in your tax return, it does show, your expenses, and that is what we hope to generate and give back to you is the what you have in your tax return. But if you don't have your taxes, that's not all of these, if you don't have them, just put 0 on it and then just keep going down the line. Licenses, if you are a contract worker and you pay for a license annually, you can include that. Utilities, I just basically go with, again, similar to the rent, how much of your utilities do you use? Because some people use so much of their electricity to run their equipment. So people who make pottery, in order to run their what do you call that? The spinny thing, sorry. But you get what I'm saying. When you have to use your utilities to run your business, we can use a certain portion of your bill to pay that. So that is basically what we look for in the application, and we total that up. And then at the bottom, it's operating expenses. That total will then be minus any other loan that you might have received. So the economic injury disaster loan program or paycheck protection loan program, we will minus that. And then at the bottom there, that's the estimated award. So what we do at the main office is we collect all of this information and we put it together and make sure that everything is there before we send it on to the third party, who will then review it for accuracy. And they do their due diligence as well. So if you have an EIN number associated with your business, they will check that. And if it's, they'll check those little things where we gather the information and forward it on, and they'll make the deciding decision if this is it goes through without any issues, or if they send it back to us and say, well, we found this problem and that problem. So that's our goal, is to make sure we get as much information, supporting documentation for the application, so that we can get it to the next step and then ultimately get you funded.
Oh, great. Thank you, Shania. And one thing too, I really want to sort of highlight is that we're not expecting perfection. So don't be afraid to submit your application with, as much documentation as you feel is necessary. But it's best to provide more than less. I think providing less will often cause the most delays, just because we have to call and make sure that things are in order. But so if you want to submit, copies of your utility bills or receipts from this and that, it's just best to probably submit those up front, because if we have that and we see that clearly, you sort of answer our question before we ask it. So that'll help your application move forward. But don't send everything. I do want to warn that too. We had people who send, copies of their marriage licenses or their birth certificates and stuff like that. Don't oversend that kind of sensitive information. But receipts and stuff, as long as they can clearly articulate without a doubt, then that really is helpful to our process, and it helps us move your application forward and onward into processing. But again, if we need clarifying information, if something doesn't seem to fit right, or if we just need additional info, be sure that you have your phone working and ready to go. So thank you, Shania. And we'll go ahead and move on to the next part of our slide. So processing and review. So, and what I mean by good applications are those applications that move quickly through the process. And good applications are ones that are complete with enough information to confidently move it forward. Again, complete as much as you can. And if you do, chances are your application's going to move ahead quickly. Supporting documentation, include more rather than less. I did see in the chat, if you don't have a 2019 taxes, but you have 2020, that's fine. In the FAQ document, it tells you kind of what is going to be required. If you're requesting less than 9,000, we won't require taxes from 2019. So it really just depends on what you're requesting, what you're eligible to receive. There are times where we might need to request additional documentation that may not necessarily be required, but we'll work with you depending on what it is. If it's something that we need to clarify by some other means, then we're more than happy to take that into consideration. Expense worksheet justifications. Again, if you're claiming in particular mileage, I think mileage has been the most common one that we've seen a lot of challenges with. My recommendation, and this is my personal recommendation, is to focus your attention on wages and supplies, if you have the documentation for supplies. But wages is typically where you want to, you need to pay yourself somehow, and wages will be the best place to do the request through. Legible, I know that this is mostly in particular to handwritten applications, but if you're typing everything in, just be sure that you put in the right information. You're not putting in for some reason, we've had on occasion someone submit an application for someone else because that's who they were thinking of at the moment, but they really meant to apply for themselves. So that can create issues. So just be sure that you're writing legibly and you're writing for yourself. Concise, things should be pretty much in line with one another. The information you submit for your worksheet should be in line with the amount of dollars in regard to your business, in regard to your requests. And then signed, make sure everything that needs to be signed is signed. Utilize the tools that are provided, like the FAQ. The FAQ I've worked hard on, so please utilize that as a means of referencing for information. If you have questions, if we're not available, just be sure to check that first. Utilize our Facebook page. There are times where we are going to not be available for assistance at our location here, or we might see some sort of a pause in processing. We'll notify as best possible through Facebook first, because Facebook is typically the easiest and most cost-effective way for communication for us. Otherwise, listen out for radio announcements, newspaper posting, all of that stuff. So it's going to be really important that you sort of have your radar in a lot of everything, but primarily it's Facebook that we do a lot of our communication from. And connect with your local business support offices. Change Labs, I commend you on the support that you've provided to your businesses and to the community out in Western Navajo. And I hope that we can further do some more outreach. Right now, we're sort of now in cruise control, having a few weeks of managing the grant program. So we'll be initiating some more grant outreach efforts throughout the Navajo Nation, in particular because we have the fairs coming up. So that's going to be an excellent opportunity for us to go out to your communities to at least set up a table and answer questions locally for all of your communities throughout the Navajo Nation. Potentially off too, but that we'll make those announcements again on Facebook. Otherwise, we have excellent partners at UNM Gallup at the Small Business Development Center, with Danae Chambers, who's also been an excellent partner with us. And if you have any ideas for outreach, please let us know. We'll take that into consideration as we move forward. So there's different events going on, and we're happy to help. We just need a little bit of time for planning to assist in those efforts. The average time right now, and correct me if I'm wrong, Shania, this part of the presentation is kind of old. So it's ideally, in a perfect world, it's about 5 to 10 business days. But I think it might be a little bit longer than that currently. Shania, can you clarify that?
Yes, that is very old. No, it is not taking 5 to 10 business days. We usually tell people it's going to be 2 to 3 weeks for the entire process and for determination of approval. And we ask that everyone answer their phones, because often that 5 to 10 days or the time frame just gets longer and longer because we're not able to get information. And it can be as simple as you did not put in your gross revenue from 2019, and that can delay it for a week because we can't contact someone to give us that information. So really, it does come down to a lot of times the applications are not ready to be submitted because there's lack of information. So it seems the average is 2 to 3 weeks right now.
Okay, good. Thank you, Shania. 2 to 3 weeks is still very impressive for the Navajo Nation, considering different programs that were out there previously. So please be patient with us. Our staff is working on a whole lot of other applications as well. We'll call you typically if we need anything, even if it's an approval. We'll let you know by phone first. but we'll try our best to get a hold of you. And if you have questions, just be sure that you're prepared with a pen and paper whenever you call us, so that way we can get you moving out for a lot faster. August 31st is the current deadline, so we have a month and a half left remaining of the program. If hopefully we're successful at expanding the program to begin re-awarding every single applicant that might have been eligible, then that might change. But currently, right now, August 31st is the deadline. Be sure that you submit your information well ahead of that time frame, at least a week. But be sure that you mark that down on your calendar. If you have any friends, family, or relatives that did not receive the grant that first time and they're legitimate artists and business owners, help them through the process. Learn what this process is, and then proceed in helping others. I mean, that's part of the whole care system, is to be sure that we're taking care of everyone here. And Change Labs is setting that example by providing these trainings and providing their resources to help applicants move through the process. So we're in this together. We're Navajo. I'm Navajo. Shanya's Navajo. Everyone out there listening to me is Navajo. So we all have a duty to take care of and be responsible for each other.
One thing I would like to note, I'm sorry, real quick, as you were talking, is there is a limit as to how many applicants per household. So when an applicant, we can only allow 2 applicants per household. And when that third applicant does come through, that will be denied. So just an FYI, if numerous people are applying from one household, the third applicant will be denied.
Thank you, Shania. And a way to consider that and to work with that rule is if you all are in one household, you can combine the application as one single entity, meaning that you're applying as one business. So that'll take some organization and some talk with whomever you're living with within your household to organize yourselves as a business, really. And that'll, provoke some other conversations, but that's one way to consider yourselves. If you're all contributing to make a single product or several products, but you just sell different places, then really you're sort of a micro corporation that exists out of your business. So consider those sort of things. Ask questions. Again, like I said, resource your local business centers and figure out a way in which you can do that and how to set your mind in a different sort of capacity to empower yourself and utilize the system in a way that benefits yourself, but to do it in a way that's proper and ethical. And then our contact information is here. Change Labs can provide that if I skip through this too soon. But we do have information available on our website, navajoeconomy.org. Our email address is at navajoeconomy@navajo-nsn.gov. Our social media is for Facebook, Navajo Economic Development /. Twitter is Navajo_DED. We don't use that often, but our major means of communication are Instagram and TikTok as well now. And that's at Navajo Economy. And our hashtags are Navajo Economy, #by Navajo, #Navajo Business. And our new one is #IBuyNavajo. So be proud of what you purchase and the services that you utilize from Navajo businesses, and proudly display that by hashtagging #IBuyNavajo. So our Q&A, let's see, we can go for another 5 minutes for questions. So I can go ahead and open that up to our participants.
Douglas, we have a number of questions here in the chat. I'm going to go ahead and go through and answer just a few of them. Okay. Hopefully I can get through them, but I'll just answer quickly here. So photography, does that fall into an artisan eligibility? Yes, it does. It can do both. It can be both. It can be an artist, someone who displays their work at a photo art show. Yes, definitely. But it can also fall into small business as well. It really depends on how you want to structure that application. Again, artist applications are just a tad bit easier to get through just because it doesn't ask as many questions. But again, it's a small business as well. So however you want to set that up. It says, I don't have my tax returns, but 2020, Douglas kind of addressed that. So if I started my small business this year, I'm not eligible. No, this is not a startup grant. We will need to see proof of anything. We will need to see proof of your business from 2019. If you have already received funding in the business grant, the last cycle, no. If you received any grant from the last cycle, you are not eligible. It is only one for now, and does include if you are you applied as an artist and you now want to be a small business, or vice versa, just one applicant per individual. But again, like Douglas said, they are working on hopefully reopening that up to have others apply a second time. Is a bank statement accepted as a receipt? Yes. We have seen a number of individuals provide bank statements and they kind of cover up all their other purchases, but in the statement, it shows the supplies that they buy and where they're buying it from. That is a good source. Again, people, they're coming up with these great solutions themselves. And yes, that is one way that people have been reporting their sales and their supplies. Starting, if you're a startup, unfortunately, we will need to make sure that you have 2019 documentation. The program is asking, so those are kind of the basic questions that are listed here. Definitely 2019 paperwork is required. What is the maximum available for artisans? The maximum available for artisans is $5,000 if you apply as an artist. But you are also eligible to get up to $60,000 as a small business. So like Douglas explained, you might be one of the artists who sell, maybe you sell $100,000 a year and you can prove your expenses were half that. You could get up to $50,000, just depending on how what you're able to show. Because some artists do provide their tax returns showing that they did spend $50,000 in expenses on their tax return. So that's definitely a possibility to get more. But if you are going to ask for more than the $5,000, you will need to apply as a small business. And is the artisan application different from the business paperwork? Yes, the artisan application is different. The small business has, it's a little bit more thorough and does ask a few more questions. It's not a whole lot different, but a little bit more stringent. And we do require more information, the more money that you're seeking. So just remember that if you are claiming expenses above $10,000, you will need to provide tax returns. That's just a must. But if you're, $8,500, and you can prove your expenses were that much for 2019, then you'll be eligible for that amount. So again, the more money you are not requesting, but the more money in your expenses, then the more we're gonna need documentation. So
sorry, Shania, let me answer this one question from Damon. Our tour business has a large owner structure with 11 owners. Will I need to submit everyone's personal information, or can we just submit the one person's information? So that would be based on the single business itself. Typically that's the CEO or the CFO who submits the application on behalf of the business. So in this case, it's a single business that would need to submit their application for that single business. And however many owners they have, that really doesn't apply. It's just mostly looking at the business singularly as that one structure. So in this case, usually the CEO or the CFO would submit the application on behalf of the business. So I imagine you're probably talking about a board, but yeah, it would be the business CEO or CFO that would submit the application on behalf of the business. Now, with regard to Shania answered the question about the artisans being different from the business. They are slightly different. Generally speaking, they're pretty the same, but depending on some factors, you might need to submit additional information. Again, that information can be detailed within the FAQ document, as there's a grading scale that will help you determine what will need to be submitted, and then what factors are considered into why certain documents are required and why certain things are required based on your account, on the amount that you're requesting, sorry. So as an artist, you don't have to submit tax returns. Yes, that's correct. However, if you're an artist applying as a small business, and you're requesting more than, and your request is greater than $10,000, then we'll need to have your taxes from 2019. With that, does anyone have any additional questions? Okay, I don't see anything else. So we'll go ahead and wrap it up there. Again, we're available by email, navajoeconomy@navajo-nsn.gov, and by phone at 928-871-6544. Your primary contacts with the grant program are Shania Manis, or we have Quincy Tracy, who is also working here, who can answer questions, but really just ask for a member of the grant staff and they'll be able to assist you with information. If necessary, we'll be able to provide direct support, hopefully, when we're able to travel a little bit more. But for now, we'll be working out of our office here. You have a resource at the Western Regional Business Development Office, Mr. Jay Cothley, who can also provide information. And you can submit paper documents to Western RBDO as well, if that's more convenient. Otherwise, remember, the grant program is open until August 31st. Hopefully, we'll be working on trying to expand it to re-award those who received it previously. So your good vibes are very much appreciated and always loved. So thank you, everyone.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Douglas. And thank you, Shania. Thank you both for being here with us today and sharing all that information. I'm sure we're all walking away with some very useful information that we weren't aware of before. And you provided a lot of clarity on the application process for the grant funding. I really liked your comment about our Native community members should take pride in being part of the Native community and Navajo economies by being an entrepreneur and being a business owner. So I do commend all business owners, especially all the ones that have been operating the last several years and enduring all the hardships. For our audience members, thank you again for being here again today. Thank you for your questions and your participation. It's very important to ask as many questions as you can, especially for a program such as this. The process can be daunting at times, but the staff working with the grant program are working very hard, and they will be able to help you out in any way that they can. So be patient with them and be kind, and it'll be okay. If you miss any part of Doug and Shania's presentation, Change Labs will have this session posted to Change Labs YouTube channel very soon. And if you missed any part of my portion of the presentation at the beginning, I talked a little bit about what Change Labs is and what we do here. And if you're interested in any of those services, feel free to reach out to me. My email is here. You can reach me directly at raquel@nativestartup.org, or if you want any other general information on Change Labs, you can definitely visit our website, nativestartup.org, as well. And then last thing I'd like to share with everybody is an announcement for our next workshop with Mr. Joseph Austin on Wednesday, July 27th, 2022 at 11:30 a.m. Mountain Daylight Time. He will be talking on the different types of business structures, such as LLCs, B Corps, sole proprietorships, and any others that you may be exploring for your own business. So definitely register for that. We will have that link up by tomorrow. Thank you so much, everyone. I'm going to close out for today. I hope you have a great rest of your day.
Raquel, sorry. I have one more thing. Yes. There's a survey following the online application. I encourage everyone to participate in that. That helps us gather essential data to make educated, responsible, and progressive recommendations to our leadership. So we're gathering data thanks to our economist, and that is really essential to our success, everyone's success.
Thank you for that, Joseph. I'm sorry, Douglas. All right, have a great day, guys.